Hello and welcome to Security Scan. I'm Vishal Dahiya, and this week we will talk about cybersecurity and defense installations. Now, technology is growing by leaps and bounds, with new and improved ways of using data analytics, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, etc. The cyberspace is all set to become a very complex domain with threats of a technological nature. And this has added one more dimension to the military operations, the cyber warfare, which involves predicting or protecting assets such as defense installations and critical information infrastructure from cyber attacks and ensure prompt and appropriate response. Now, several critical government agencies have faced varied types of cyber attacks in recent past. In addition to the existing mechanism, Government of India has set up a Defence Cyber Agency earlier this year, which comprises of officers from all three armed forces. And the National Cyber Security Strategy is expected to be revealed early next year. For more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests in studio today. Let me first introduce the guests to you, beginning with Retired Major General Ravi Arora, the Chief Editor of Indian Military Review. We also have with us Retired Lieutenant General Dr. V.K. Saxena, our Distinguished Fellow from VIF, and we have with us Mr. Sudhiranjan Sen, the Senior Editor from Hindustan Times. Welcome all of you, gentlemen, to Rajya Sabha TV studios. Let me begin with you, General Arora, and let's first try and look at this issue in a holistic perspective. Let's try and first identify what exactly do we mean when we say these words, cyber threat, cyber warfare, or cyber security with respect to the defense forces.
Let's be clear. We hear often about phishing, hacking, malware, cybercrime. Now, that is a different kettle of fish. I would say that is more or less in the civil domain, although the methods used may be the same for carrying out cyber warfare. But when we talk of cyber warfare, there are two aspects. One is the defensive aspect and one is the offensive aspect. Defensive is to prevent the adversary from gaining control or information or cultivating spies in our organizations. Offensive is about finding out, identifying these threats, where they emanate from, and attacking them so that they are unable to carry out that cyber warfare. Mm-hmm. Now, we do have at the national level, that is under the PMO or under the Cabinet Secretariat, various agencies, which includes the National Security Council, the NTRO, Research and Analysis Wing, a number of other agencies who are looking after this aspect. And under the MHA also, we have more or less agencies which are identifying these threats, which includes forensic labs as well, the Forensic Center, Informatics Center. And under the Ministry of Defense, we have the newly created Defense Cyber Agency, which will subsume the cyber command cells of the three services, and whatever the military intelligence in the Army, Navy and Air Force were running, and a few other agencies which were available, with a different aim. The aim is not only cyber, it is to assist the armed forces in their operations. Now, war nowadays and the future will be in all domains, land, sea and air, plus cyberspace and space as well. So when you talk of cyberspace, this is where the Defense Cyber Agency will come in.
Okay.
And this includes three domains. One is the cyber domain, one is the physical domain, and one is the people domain. Cyber domain, I mean the environment in which the whole thing functions.
Okay.
The software, the applications, the operating systems, and physical or hardware is the actual stuff which we use, the machines, and people, because more often than not, if you have got good defense protocols, good defensive systems, guidelines being followed, then the adversary is going to target people. And now here I want to remind everybody, we had a case in which the data of the Scorpion submarine was leaked. Again, it was traced to a French subcontractor. That means a person who had actually leaked it. And similarly, there have been other attacks, like one was called the Naval War Room leak. It started with a wing commander's house being raided, a pen drive being recovered, and in the pen drive, a lot of naval data being recovered, and became to be known as the Naval War Room leak. So people were targeted. And that's how the adversary uses these things like honey trap or getting into your smartphones, installing some kind of malware to get information from you, to embarrass you, to blackmail you. So these are all aspects, and in this case, and I will come to it later, China is excelling while keeping everything which they have. They are denying their own information and obtaining all these secrets. This is where defense cyber comes in. Obtaining your secrets related to operations, plans, equipment, design, and about your people.
Okay, so in a nutshell, that's what the entire concept, entire issue here is. But let me bring in General Saxena here. And in case of a cyber attack, we have seen some critical government agencies being hackers have tried to go ahead and hack their systems or servers and try to conduct that cyber attack. But in case of defense forces, what is it that is at stake if there is a cyber attack?
That's a very pertinent question. And to address this, we have to see a macro picture. The macro picture relates to the digital battlefield. What is a digital battlefield? In today's scenario, especially in the three services, we have layered command, control, and communication center. This digital battlefield recognizes no borders, firstly. Also, in this digital battlefield, the attacks are done at the speed of light in the civil domain, in the cyber domain. As said colloquially, here in the digital field, the victory is achieved not by bullets but by bits. The agent of warfare is malware, not militia, and botnet, not the bombs. What is at stake? Let's just imagine. Now we all know that the command, control, communication computers are a network of systems because of the three services' deep dependence on electromagnetic spectrum. Today there are large number of networks, both horizontally and hierarchically, that means vertically, which relate to command, control, communication, computers, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and logistics. Now these networks are all dependent, their umbilical cord or their common thread runs in the digital domain, in the cyber domain, which is susceptible to cyber attack. That is only one dimension, only one dimension. The other important dimension is critical information which we are storing. This critical information storage can be what? Can be national interest, can be our critical technology, can be our codes and regimes of the nuclear war and the nuclear warfare attacks. It can also be decision support system. A critical decision to be taken is dependent on a flow of communication from one commander to some other. That is a decision loop. I am not only talking of commander, I may talk of the national command post from where the president or the prime minister or the political head of the nation has to give a critical order, let's say of nuclear retaliation. If that gets blocked at the critical time, you can imagine. Imagine another important thing. Navigation and guidance system of military platforms. What is this? Now you see aircrafts, you see missiles, you see surface to air missile, surface to surface missile, ballistic missile. You see a host of unarmed aerial systems. You see the offensive air support, our aircrafts going and intercepting enemy aircraft. All these are dependent, critically dependent on real-time communication, missile guidance, aircraft control, and also fire control in general. At the critical moment, if that is disturbed, your aircraft will not chase an interceptor aircraft, your missile will not hit the particular target, your unarmed aerial system will be disabled and will be brought home, your ballistic missile defense system will miss its target. Imagine that catastrophe. Now it doesn't stop here. What about, sir talked about outer space. our systems in outer space today are increasingly vulnerable. We just talked about in a program some time back about the ASAT system, ASAT capability. Why are we requiring defense in outer space? Because too much is at stake in the ultimate frontier. Too much is at stake.
Okay.
Also, one more last point I want to bring out is that this cyber attack is not only weapons, platforms, communications, layered this thing. It is also in the cognitive domain. What is cognitive domain? Information warfare, propaganda warfare, brainwashing the soldiers by bringing out undesirable changes in behavior is also a part of cyber warfare. So this much is at stake. This is the threat to us at the present.
Okay, that's quite a interesting sum up, and that's quite a lot out there to think about. But Sudhi, if you look at how digital technology is now a very integral part of the entire defense ecosystem, for every country. It's not only about India. So from your perspective, how do you see, these threats which involve either the defense infrastructure, installations, or the information infrastructure, or the entire command structure, and other aspects, as has been pointed out by both the generals?
See, I mean, India has been, although, it's been very, very clever in a way, because rarely do we come across, structures whereby you clearly air gapping your critical systems from your peripheral systems. Now, air gapping is, very briefly for our viewers, air gapping is your critical systems are not on the internet. So if you're not on the internet, it's very difficult to get, to hack onto it or get into it. But that said, technology is changing. You have now abilities to jump the air gap. What we recently saw in Kudankulam nuclear power plant is because there was an air gap, there was, the damage was limited. And whether it is your government, whether it is the military, whether it is, name it, any critical or non-critical, more or less everybody is air gapped. So that way we are kind of safe, and it goes a long way to talk about it, or it gives a understanding as to how we have been thinking about dealing with this. But that said, you have systems like your air traffic control, like your banking system, which if you can kind of compromise, you can bring a nation down to its knees. You literally don't need to go and to attack a nuclear system or tinker with a missile guidance system. But to bring a nation down to its knees, you can tinker with the banking system, which seems to be our problem.
Okay.
Because there is a lot of, private, what should I say, enterprise that is needed, because a private sector may not necessarily think that, cyber security or investing on cyber security is worth it.
So civilian installations have a lot of private interface. That is why they're more vulnerable.
So that is yeah, because they may not invest as much as is required.
Okay.
Whereas the threat levels are going.
And from a national security point of view, they are as critical as the defense
a banking system, or
well.
a banking system is the most critical system. It can bring your entire commerce, your country down to your knees.
Okay.
If I can hack into it.
Okay. Going back to